Hello and welcome to Making Events Matter. I'm Dom Honey from Event Results, and I'm here with long-term collaborator and old mate Steve Bather. Steve's the head honcho of the Realise Group, and we have spent our careers turning events from just another gathering to making them matter. So today we're going to look at the planning phase, perhaps the most critical phase in any event design. The quality of the planning ultimately dictates the impact, quality and legacy of the event. So, hello, Steve.
Hi, Dom. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Delighted to be here for episode 9 of Making Events Matter. And just a quick thank you to all those people who have subscribed and follow us. We are trying to do one of these every week or 10 days. And also, there's an open offer just to give us an idea about what topics you might want us to cover around making events matter. But yeah, today we're going to talk about the planning phase. And of course, this is often the phase where you really engage with the client in depth about what they're looking for from the event. And there are lots and lots of different approaches and techniques. We've settled on a number of different principles around the planning process, but largely it starts somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks before the event, depending on the size and scale and complexity of the event. And it has a number of sort of significant elements towards it. So what about your perspective, Dom, on the planning process?
Yeah, so from my perspective, obviously I pay close attention to the discussions around objectives and deliverables, but I'm also concerning myself with the more technical aspects of the support that we offer. So, for example, the app, the technology that's in use at the venue, if we're in person, the AV, thinking about the risks associated, depending on the style of the event that we're running, whether it's virtual, the difficulty or otherwise that speakers might have connecting to the to get online, for example, or if there's going to be an issue with them being able to speak to the audience. And the same is true if it's in person. Speakers, again, are top of the list, really, in terms of making sure that they're present if they're going to be speaking in person, or that we've handled the risk of them not turning up by, for example, recording them in advance so that we've got some content from them that we can play if they, for any reason, miss a flight or struggle to, or are sick, for example. So I'm always thinking, okay, so this is the deliverable or this is the objective. So what is the fallback if the AV is delayed or the power is cut or the Wi-Fi at the venue goes down? What are our fallbacks? Or a speaker doesn't turn up, for example.
Yeah. And a big chunk of that planning phase is to think through and manage and plan as many of the risks and contingencies as possible. But the basic infrastructure around the planning phase, which I guess is, to me, the most important phase of the whole process, because it starts with really understanding what the client wants in terms of what's the purpose or the strap line, the mission statement, if you like, for the event. What are they trying to achieve at a kind of a macro level? And then we work with them to break that down into key objectives. And of course, the significant thing about an objective is that it's measurable. So that's where the outcomes and deliverables come in. So how do we get from objectives to deliverables is effectively the arc that represents the planning phase. And we're often working with a team that perhaps has been seconded onto the annual conference planning team. So they're perhaps not very used to going through this process. And I think what we give as a professional external organization is just the support, the right questions, a real deep understanding about the process and the steps in the process that get us to being absolutely prepared and ready to run the event with them. And so a lot of those implications, you're talking about remote speakers and so on, just thinking about that, having a two-way conversation with a remote presenter is something that is a much more difficult thing to do technically than you might imagine, and of course has a cost implication. So a lot of the time in the planning process, we're talking about what the implications are to having different types and styles of events, and we're also proposing how we think we best achieve those objectives. More often than not, people will say we need it to be engaging, we need it to be interactive. So we put certain principles in place, like the length of presentations, 3, 6, 9, 12, or 14 minutes, equal time for Q&A immediately afterwards, trying to mix and match the type of sessions and so on. So all these have implications, and you're managing this space, Dom, during the event. So you're looking out for subtly different things to the ones that I'm looking out for. And I know quite often I can hear you taking a sharp intake of breath at my suggestion of some process or way of working within the event that causes you sort of technical pain, and of course then have to dig deep and get through that solution.
Yeah, no, that's right, and but that's part and parcel of meeting the requirements of any event, and to be honest, although there's a theme to our planning and there's an approach that we take, every event is different, even though what we're proposing and what the major planks of our delivery, for example, the event planning document, the necessity for setting good, solid objectives and measurable deliverables, making sure that whatever is required from the event in terms of session style or format or speaker availability, we're accommodating all of those needs in order to meet the deliverables.
And you're also managing the timetable towards perhaps inviting people onto the app platform.
Yeah.
And working with all the GDPR and the data protection issues around that, having the client introduce you so that you can connect with them. What sort of things are you looking out for? What's the optimum time scale to get people engaged online before the event?
Minimum 1 week in advance of the event starting, but we have successfully launched platforms up to 2 months in advance of the event starting. It certainly with well organised sponsors and client teams, then where we've got content ready, for example, the agenda. If the agenda, typically we wouldn't launch an app unless the agenda is pretty much landed as a minimum, but sometimes where we can launch questionnaire or find out more information from the attendees or encourage networking. Most networking actually, when you've got a digital app, happens in advance of the event, not at it or after it. So giving attendees a good run up to use the technology in advance is to their benefit, but also improves engagement.
Yeah. And so typically, how many emails might people get in advance of an event? Because we know people are pretty overwhelmed with email, and that's kind of one of the baseline ways of communicating with people. But getting them onto the platform and getting this kind of fear of missing out or needing to continually update themselves as to what's happening in that ramp up towards the event, what typically would be the process of inviting
in terms
them
of
emails?
onboarding participants to the platform, we probably send a minimum of 3 emails, one to launch or the invite email, a reminder, and then on the day of the event or on the days of the event, another email would go out. That would be the minimum, assuming a 7-day lead time from launch to event. But if it were longer, a month or 2 in advance, then probably we'd be looking at more like an email per week, sort of outlining why someone should engage with the platform, new content that's been released, questions that the organisers might be asking, etc. So drip feeding new information weekly is our normal practice.
Yeah, and of course, all the platforms have to be secured. They're
Oh yeah.
encrypted. They're very safe, and so on, so that we are protecting people's data as well, but also the data involved in the event. So that in some cases, we work with organisations that perhaps don't wish the information to be out there in the public realm. So we have to be, absolutely sacrosanct about the protection of the data, who's speaking at the event, some of the content, some of the workshop tracks and things like that
Yeah.
we're automatically producing as the agenda emerges from the planning process.
Yeah, and I think as we come to the end of this episode, and we're trying to take our own advice and deliver these podcasts in a
Yeah.
shorter format, more like a TED talk than a long form 20 or 30-minute podcast. So we're going to wrap up soon. But in terms of, if we come back to the planning topic, what we're trying to do with clients in advance is help not only worry about the immediate, what do we need to deliver to have a successful event, we're also starting or having the conversation about post-event legacy. So what are the things that we can do to maintain engagement, maintain momentum, continue for the digital tools that a lot of people have invested a lot of time in, and where that will hold the knowledge of the event within it. How can we use that and develop it? And if we try and agree those major content items or major milestones that will happen after the event to maintain the momentum.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right, and we talked about that in other episodes, Don, where we're building towards what is necessarily the legacy effect of the event, and the planning phase, and actually thinking through the detail and thinking through the experience that participants will have, and making sure that we've got absolutely everything covered, is a great step towards making sure that the event primarily is a huge success, and then the flow between that and the legacy, the community of practice, the ongoing outcomes and tracking of actions really happens because we've set everything up in purpose. And just to go back to just almost a summary, really, bearing in mind the time we've got left. The planning is documented and managed by us as the professionals, and it's updated every time before we have a meeting, so the client knows exactly where we are. And very quickly, it includes the purpose, all the information that you need for the event, the purpose, the objectives, the expected outcomes. The background, the relevant positioning for the event. Is this a series of events, or is this a one-off? Is it an annual event, and so on? All the logistics. We need contact names with the venue. We need to understand the location, the individuals and roles who are going to support us when we're on site. And of course, the emerging and constantly updated draft agenda of how the sessions are going to be mixed, and how the energy can be managed over the day through the different types of sessions that we manage. We produce a project plan with the critical dates and milestones towards the event and post-event. We look at tracking the actions so that when we need the client to do certain things, we support them in doing those actions and the communications, and then review those in the subsequent planning meetings. We look at risk and contingencies and the critical elements that will perhaps trip us up, as you talked about earlier, Dom. And of course, we have a standing agenda for a planning meeting, which includes any other business for anything new that's come up during the process. So we're really thorough about the planning process. We know it sets up the successful event, and we know it sets up the successful legacy from that event. So yeah, it's all about planning. Thanks, Dom.
That's a great way to stop. Thanks for summarising that, Steve. And let's say thank you to our listeners for tuning in, and we will see you next time.